Hello and welcome to Men in Progress, the podcast of the United Methodist Men of Trietsch here in Flower Mound, Texas. We're part of the Life Plus God podcast series from Trietsch Memorial United Methodist Church. We drop a new podcast every Tuesday. I really appreciate you listening to our latest episode. My name is Dave Casey, and if you've listened to our podcast before, you know that we're just a bunch of guys trying to be better men and live better lives in our walk with God. In this episode of Men in Progress, we're tackling one of the most discussed, debated, and sometimes controversial topics when it comes to Christianity, and that's M-O-N-E-Y, money. If you look at the few times Jesus got angry, more than once, it was about money. In fact, it's estimated that 15% of everything Jesus had to say was about money and possessions. In all, there are roughly 2,350 verses in the Bible about money, how we should think about it, who we should give it to, and the danger that comes from loving it too much. To help me discuss these thoughts and others, I'm joined by three of the brightest brothers that we have from Trietsch Memorial United Methodist, Ted Hyde, Paul Beck, and Michael Tuggle. Guys, welcome to Men in Progress.
Thanks.
Hey, I'm delighted to be here.
Yeah, what a cast and crew we have tonight. So I've got to tell you, getting ready for this podcast, I've been thinking a lot about the role that money plays in our lives, not just our church lives or the Methodist Church or even faith in general, but it just seems to be a very divisive topic. And so we're going to start there. And I'm going to start with Mr. Beck, Paul Beck. You know, what do you think it is about money and even giving it away that causes anxiety and stress in people?
I think, and I can say this with some authority. I think people worry too much about losing their home, not being able to pay the bills, certainly not wanting to infringe upon their children. My kids really don't want me to move in with them.
Right.
So I think that's, for me.
So just that overall kind of like catastrophe that could happen.
Yeah.
And do that. And no matter how much money you have, it seems like people worry about that.
That's correct.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, because, as we all know, particularly with the group that's in attendance tonight, we all have friends and relatives that have had medical issues.
Yeah.
And medical problems that can
wipe you out.
They can wipe you out in a hurry.
Well, and I think, and you might want to speak to this a little bit, Ted, but I've seen people that I thought were comfortable and had money have a medical problem, and then pretty much you don't get assistance until you've run through all your money.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
To
tell you the truth, from my perspective, there's two issues that are at the forefront of what you're asking about. And one is this sense of scarcity. There's once that there's a sense that there's never enough, just like what you said. But there's another side of that too, and I believe it's the self-centeredness that we all have to overcome, because there's something that is built into us to put ourselves first.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's at the base level, that's kind of human survival, but we kind of have to overcome that because we aren't in danger. There's no saber-toothed tiger going after us, I don't think. So, Michael, do you think money's a harder thing for people of faith to reconcile? Because, part of our faith is that we don't own this money. This is all God's money. We're called to be the steward of the money, but it's not really ours. That should be that should be what we think as Christians. I'm not sure that everyone does, but
yeah, I think it should be. I think your primary orientation should be that it's God's and we're just stewards of it and we're here to take care of it. But I also think we're Christians, but we're also just human beings, and I think we are somewhat wired. Some are wired, as Ted said, more of a selfish kind of thing, like I want to hold on to what I have and not share it. I think for a lot of people, it's fear. Like kind of what Paul was saying. I mean, I remember when I was early in my career, my mindset was, God, if I could just make X, I'd be okay.
Yeah.
You go from that early stage of month to month to bouncing a check here and there to whatever. And it's like, if I could just make X. And then I was making 2X, and I was still thinking, golly, if I could just make 4x,
Yeah.
5x,
or even switch to Y's.
right,
Add some more
exactly.
zeros.
Right.
Absolutely.
And then I got to the point where I was making enough that it wasn't month to month. I could
Yeah.
put a little bit away. We could afford a vacation, what have you. But then I shifted into the fear of I don't have enough to retire.
Right.
And I've sort of honestly in that same period now where I'm not ready to retire, but I'm looking down the road at it and I'm going, I haven't saved enough for retirement.
Yep.
And then it becomes a legacy question of, boy, I'd love to leave something for my children.
Sure.
And so there's always something to be fearful of. And I don't like feeling like Chicken Little at all. I don't.
Yep.
But I find myself in that position, and I have to tell myself that there's a bigger thing at work here than just me.
Yeah. And it's interesting because, and we'll get into this a little bit during the podcast. We're in the starts of a capital campaign here at this church. And I've been through many of those campaigns over the years, and part of that is that you have some frank discussions about money, and you're asking people to maybe relinquish a little more than they have, no matter where they are in their life of giving. You're asking for just a tad more, but the challenge is that I think that when people look at it, they've got a budget, they've had everything put together, and any variation from that, it seems that creates fear. That's kind of what you talked about, I think, in many cases. To get back to what we talked about in faith, I think there's many of us that if you ask them, are you a faithful Christian? Like, gosh, I am. Yes, I am. But when it comes to giving money away, it's hard. I never ask anybody this, but, there's the concept of tithing. Do you tithe? And do you fulfill that part of your Christian walk by saying, yes, I give my money, and I give it with a sense of joy, not a sense of dread or a sense of obligation. So Ted, can you speak to that? Is that a struggle that you've been through, or?
Well, as we mature in our faith, I think everybody, or an awful lot of us anyway, have to mature and grow into that. But I want to start by saying that if you don't believe in God, if you don't believe in Jesus Christ, then I want to give you a bye, because there are other issues. There are other issues to address there. But if you do believe in the Creator, and if you believe in the sacrifice Jesus Christ made for us, then how can you not be grateful and actually want to give back?
Yeah.
I mean, we're instructed to do that. So again, if you don't believe that there is a Creator, let's talk about a different topic. But if you do, then I just think it's all about being grateful for who God is and what Christ has done for us.
Yeah. Well, and it's really a personal relationship. It's a personal decision, although it becomes a family decision when it becomes money. I think we certainly I wouldn't make any major decision, I don't think, without talking to Doris about it. Although early in our marriage, we had a couple of incidents like that. I came home with a new truck one day, and she said, "Wow, was that in our budget?" And I said, "Well, it was in my budget, So it was, and that was it was a hard discussion there for a bit, but she said, "Hey, you've got your own income. I guess that's okay." But anyway, you get into those type of things, but to go back to the Christian analysis of it, and I think, Ted, you expressed it very well, but not everyone kind of looks at it that way. So I think we've all seen a number of very high-profile, highly visible, I'll just say TV preachers, maybe, that carry on a certain lifestyle. They live in mansions, they fly around in jets, drive expensive cars, they have an entourage. And I'm just wondering if some people of faith, or even those that aren't believers, see that and immediately bring a negative a negative connotation between church and money. So, Paul, have you talked to anybody that brought that up when you said, "Hey, I'm a Christian"?
I don't know that I've actually spoken to anybody about that, but the fact of the matter is, we look at those televangelists, those guys with all the money. We have no idea. They might tithe 20% of that money back to the church or to other worthy causes.
Yeah.
So I mean, we don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, we may not approve of their lifestyle. There are probably lots and lots of people in their churches that don't have enough food, that don't have, that
Right.
struggle to pay their electric bill. And should they reach out and should they be helping those folks? That's a big dirty can of worms that you open up there. But I want to come back to something that Ted mentioned earlier. That I was on a weekend retreat years ago, and when Kim and I first started coming to Treach, we decided that we needed to donate to the church, and this was back in 1984, back in the old days.
Sure.
And
when $1 was worth something back then.
So we were really big givers because I told her, I said, why don't we give $25 a week to the church?
Yeah.
That's $100 a month, So, and we started doing that, and then we probably bumped it up a little bit. Like I say, I went on this retreat, and that's where I heard, that somebody mentioned it here already, that everything comes from God, and all He asks for in return is 10%.
Yep.
So, I thought to myself, that's a pretty good deal in and of itself. But then the real clincher for me was that I could take my paycheck, and I am a after tax tither, because even Jesus said, "Give to Caesar, what Caesar's do." But it makes it so simple. When I look at my payroll check, I can take that check and I can move the decimal one place, and I know how much to write the check.
Easy to get to 10%.
It really is simple. Yeah. And I have to tell you that since we made that decision, and we've never wavered. And there have been a couple of
thick and thin.
There have been a couple of dry spells in the Beck household with jobs, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure.
But we've never ever wavered on that 10%. And you can take a look at me. I've not done without anything. I've eaten well, and there's no question about it. And we live in a beautiful home, and
scratch golfer. I mean, you've obviously been on the course a lot.
Well, this is supposed to be a Christian discussion, so we're going to have to pass on
we
that.
won't get into
that
golf.
Scratch golfer there.
We're going to do Michael. We will have to do a golf segment here on one of these things.
But like I say, since we've tithed, our life has been, I don't want to say it's been perfect, but I got to tell you what, it's been good.
Well, it's got to give you a peace of mind, kind of thing.
And my dear pastor, is always after me to, do the automatic deposit into the church, and I tell him, I get up Sunday mornings, and I do last minute preparation for my Sunday school class, and I pull out the checkbook, and I write my check. I write a check, and I bring it with me to the church. In the old days, I got to put it in the offering plate. Now I get to put it in the offering box. But that for me is a big deal, taking that check and putting it in the offering.
Yeah.
But Paul, before we move on, and you and I are on the same page. I agree. And I think this is what you said before, but Ann and I did not start in our marriage tithing.
Well, neither did we.
Yeah.
No.
We were
neither
giving
did we,
a little bit.
so.
And so there are people listening to this right now, I hope, that maybe they aren't tithing, maybe they aren't giving anything. So I think the objective is to get to tithing, but to start.
Got to start somewhere.
To start giving something.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really interesting along the way. One of the things that helped fight the fear that I felt was every time we tended to say, okay, we're going to give more, and we gave more, magically more showed up.
Yeah.
Like I had times when I really don't think we can afford it, but it's going to hurt a lot, and I don't know, we'll see how it goes. And then a freelance project would fall out of the sky.
Yeah.
Or a different job would show up, or a raise would show up, and it was like people say, well, it's coincidental. And I'm like, well, you can believe it's coincidence. I don't really believe it's coincidence.
Yeah.
I don't think it's well, I wish I had $1 million, and it shows up tomorrow. It's not that kind of relationship.
It's not a genie in the bottle
No.
kind of deal.
But
So-
it is if you can lean into it and trust a little bit
Yeah.
and believe that it's going to be okay, then I think a lot of times
Yeah.
it is.
Key comment. What you just said. When you write that check, that 10%, that tithe, you have to trust,
Yes.
because it'd be a lot simpler to write a 1% or a 2% or a 3%, and put it off to the side and say, well, when I don't need this, I'll give it to the church.
Yeah.
But giving it all at once, that 10%, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
That's a big deal. And the good news is that I'm now living proof that works, and the more often I can tell somebody about it, the more often I like to do that, because
and it's despite that, it's interesting, having served on finance over the years in this church, and every church is the same, I'll say, is that the great majority of the contributions happen in the fourth quarter, and a great majority of those happen in the month of December. So people aren't as faithful as you in terms of a regular giver. They might be regular, but they're regular on an annual basis as opposed to a weekly or monthly basis. So that's it's certainly a challenge for church budgeting, but regardless of that, the effort is there, the contribution is made. I think that's really, at the end of the day, what's important. So Michael, I got a question for you. This is in the way you answered that earlier question, you may talk directly to this, but do you think people struggle in giving to church because conceptually grace is free? Grace is free to us as believers, and so we're just kind of thinking should there be a cost? It's free. I mean, that's the church doors are open. You come in and why are there dollars attached to that?
Yeah, well, it is a free enterprise for sure. You don't have to spend a dime, and that's a beautiful part of it.
Yeah.
But I think to Ted's part earlier, if you are a believer and if you believe in a creator and you want to see good in the world happen, it doesn't happen just by magic or accident, right? It does take an investment.
Sure.
And so I think you can look at it certainly with the mindset of, well, I have to pay this, or the church has to pay its bills or whatever. But if you can frame it, with a mindset of you're helping build the kingdom, you're helping to do good work, you're helping to do missions work, you're helping to reach people who need it, need faith, need God, need Christ a lot more than maybe we do, right? If you can think about it that way, yeah, it's free. But again, what a joy to be in a position where you can give. And we're going to talk about the revival campaign. I think that is part of that, is doing that with a cheerful heart, looking at down the road of what does the next 40 years of this church look like. What a gift to be able to invest in that and to be part of, expanding the kingdom through Treach to our community is pretty special.
Yeah. You're a great straight man, because I'm going to go right to Mr. Ted Hyde. And we're going to talk a little bit about Treach's upcoming capital campaign, which is called Revival. And for those that don't know, Ted and his wife, Ann, are co-chairs of Revival. So, Ted, for listeners who haven't heard anything about the campaign, tell us a little bit about what it's about and why is it important to Treach?
Well, I want to start by saying, if you're attending Treach and you haven't heard anything about Revival, then we're doing something wrong. But there may be people listening that don't come on a regular basis and are not aware.
Yeah.
So I got to tell you, I'm so excited, genuinely excited about this initiative, this program going on within our congregation. I'm going to start initially with the very fundamental aspects of the campaign. We just celebrated our 40th year as a congregation, and that is phenomenal. And God has blessed us so powerfully, and this congregation has truly been the hands and feet of Christ. But there are parts of our physical structure that have not received the repairs that they've needed. They've not received the updating or even the ability to make changes to effectively do ministry. So this campaign is about our physical infrastructure, right? We're going to do repairs. We're going to do some reconfiguration, and we're going to make enhancements. Now, fundamentally, this is going to be funded by, number one, the sale of our Family Life Center.
Which is just one of the buildings on our campus.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
And the other one is through the Revival Investment Campaign, where people have the opportunity to contribute toward. But I want to tell you that it's so much more than about the building. I love the word revival because that's exactly what this initiative is. To me, it's an opportunity for our congregation to rally around this initiative. I read this book just recently. It's called The Art of Hospitality.
Oh, neat.
One of the things that is said in this book that I truly think is profound is that we need to do everything we can inside our congregation to support and make comfortable everyone from outside our congregation. That's what revival is all about.
Yeah, the invitational part.
It is an invitational part that we rally around, that we're excited about, and we give God the glory for as we proceed.
Well, thank you much for that, and thanks for stepping up to chair it. I know that's a big.
Well, Ann and I are co-chairs with Chris and Nikki Sears, but let me tell you, there are a massive number of hands and feet involved in this overall.
Oh, that's
initiative.
wonderful. That's cool. That's a good feeling. Well, as a part of that, Paul, and this ties a little bit what you said earlier. One of the themes in this campaign, and pretty much every campaign I've been part of, is equal sacrifice, not equal gifts. And I think we all look around and say, well, this guy over here he could give millions if he wanted, that type of thing. I only can give this much. And it seems like that's a mindset we have to deal with and something we have to kind of reconcile for ourselves. So what's your opinion of that concept of equal sacrifice, not equal gifts?
I didn't think you were going to ever let me talk again, that's scary.
Well, I don't have the button. Geez, I guess we're stuck with you. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, the fact of the matter is that that there are some people that and some people. What's the word? When you have more money than you know what to do with, it's what I'm struggling. What's
this? More money than you know what to do with?
Yeah, no, I mean...
I'm unfamiliar with the concept.
But disposable.
Oh, disposable income.
Some people have...
Yes.
I have a high school buddy who's a multimillionaire. He's got lots of money.
Yeah.
He's got lots of houses. So he's got lots and lots of disposable income. The Becks don't have a lot of disposable income. Do we have enough money to participate in this program? You bet we do, and we will. Mm-hmm. But I wanted to share a story. I'm one of the guys that's involved with putting together one of the upcoming gatherings. And so I'm calling people after they've received an email. One of the guys that got an email is actually not a member of this church. He and his wife do attend the Berean Sunday School class, which is cool. And
shameless plug.
Yeah. We still have a few chairs left.
Okay.
And I called him the other night and I suggested him. I said, are you going to be able to come to the gathering? And he says no, because he's got a good reason. His job will keep him from being there. But he says by the way, I got the email, and he says, I went ahead and wrote a check for $10,000 and sent it to Daniel. not a member of this church.
That's powerful.
His grandchildren
Yeah.
go to TEC. He and his wife love the Sunday school class they attend. He belongs to another church in another state. But like he said, there was no question in my mind. So you talk about stepping up.
Sure. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and yes, he can afford it. I'm not worried about him missing a meal.
Yeah.
But he didn't have to do that.
Of course not. Yeah.
So,
That's a testimony to your Sunday school, obviously, but to this church overall. I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So the equal sacrifice it's we all know what we can do, right? And that's between me and God.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to fill out a document and sign it, but that's not a legal document.
Sure.
If I choose not to pay that off, that's fine. But if I sign that document, I've told God that I'm participating in this program, and I will follow through.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember the last campaign we had, Kim and I, came up with a number, and lo and behold, this commission check came in and that commission check came in, and we paid off our 3-year commitment, and golly gee, we still had some more money. So we gave more. And you talk about a feel-good
Yeah.
Praise God.
experience.
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
I hope I answered your question.
No, you did.
I rambled.
It
I'm
is.
sorry.
It is definitely equal sacrifice, not equal gifts. So on paper, kind of changing our mindset about money, really embracing the idea that the complete faith and giving money away without worry seems like it should be easy. We're studied of the Bible, we're studied in Christianity and Methodism, but if I turn on the news, and all I hear about is inflation, healthcare. There's no end to the cost of healthcare. We've had a pandemic. Now, because of good healthcare, we're going to last a lot longer. So now I'm going to outlive my money, because my health is so good. So it's not an easy topic. So, Michael, what do you say to people that are still afraid to trust God, with their money and how they spend it?
What I would say is, dip your toe in.
Yeah.
One of the things, Ted and Paul were just talking about it, and we certainly went through that too, of early on was we didn't give nearly what we wished we wanted to. Well, not what we wanted to. We wanted to give a lot, but we were afraid to give more than we did.
Sure.
And we were probably unable to give as much as we'd like. But one of the things that really, really helped that was, and it always in October when we do our stewardship campaign, they started to put the postcards, and they had that 1% step up graph on the back. And it showed if you give 1% of your income, this is what it looks like.
Yeah.
And if you give 1% this year, well, maybe next year try 2%. And then the next year try 3%. And then before you knew it, we were at 9%.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, this is doable. It's just, but you don't have to go, because you think about tithing right out of the gate, and you're like, oh, that's really hard to get my head around.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if I can't do that, well, I just won't do anything at all. And that's so...
It's hard to get. You got to get started. Yeah.
And so even if, there's the story of the widow that gave the 2 pennies, right?
Yeah.
Even if you give a little bit, just to get going, you'll see how it goes. And you see, you know what? I can do this. And it might be one less latte, one less pizza a month, but I can do it.
Yeah. There's a lot of, I won't say mechanisms, but there's just ideas, and I think psychologically. And, of course, the Bible says, the whole idea of the 10% is first fruits. So that's the money you give, or the grain you give first.
Right.
And then you live on the rest. And that's really the way we should do it. And if you follow that, it actually kind of leads to something I think every one of us has talked about, is once you've made that commitment and done that, you don't really miss it. It's like, I can't tell you that Netflix really affects my monthly budget, because it's there every month. And and there's probably a dozen other subscriptions that I'd forgotten that I have that are there every month that I have to, go back and clean up every once in a while. But I think it's a mindset that we enter into. And I think it's so much better. And I like Paul. I really like the idea of writing a check. It's funny. I write so few checks. When I actually write a check, the bank calls Doris and say, "We think you've been hacked because there's a strange signature that just showed up. I mean, is it okay?" Is that kind of deal. I write one check every 2 to 3 years.
Hey, I just want to interject here. 'Cause
Sure.
I believe and agree with everything that we've been talking about on this particular topic. But I don't want anyone who's listening to think we don't realize that there are folks really struggling.
Oh, yeah.
That trying to make ends meet means that you're working multiple jobs. And I get that. I really do. But I want to just suggest, and I'm harping here a little bit, but I believe God calls us to have faith in him. And what's really hard for me is when I use a synonym of that word faith, and we've said it. It really hits home when I trust God. Again, if you're not giving it all, try starting small. Just try starting small and see. Put God to the test. See that he is faithful.
Yeah. Man, we've got a preacher in the making here.
Oh, are you
I
kidding?
think.
Right.
Oh, there's no question about that.
Yeah.
I'm going to challenge my good friend Michael here.
Ah.
He made a comment just a minute ago, and he said, just dip your toe in the water.
Mm-hmm.
I think the challenge for those of us that have dove into the pool is that we need to share that with those people that are learning, that are growing. I think there are a lot of young people in this church that would sit in this room and say, "Man, that's four pretty cool guys," because they know us.
Nobody's going to say that.
I beg to differ, Michael, but I have to tell you that I think it's our responsibility. It's a responsibility for us to share that we've done it and it works.
Yeah, there's again, I've chaired one of these campaigns in the past as well, served on finance, and there's old and new schools of thought. The old school of thought, it's nobody's business what I give to the church. Mm-hmm. It's nobody's business whether I give to the church even. And certainly that's one way to look at it. The second way really is that you model behavior and, and you openly talk about, I have no problem giving to the church because the church has done so much for me, that the Lord has done so much for me, and that these people have done so much for me. And anything I can do to help their mission, I'm all in, and that's the type of positive reinforcement I think we talk about. So guys, I've got to thank you so much for joining me. This is a tough discussion, and you guys just handled it wonderfully. So thanks again.
Thanks. You. Enjoyed
Delighted
it.
to be here.
All righty, guys. So there you have it, episode 16 of Men in Progress. We hope you enjoyed our conversation and that you'll join us again in May when our topic will be how to be a good parent when your kids don't honor father and mother. Knowing we all have perfect children, I'm sure that'll be a short one. Thanks again to Ted Hyde, Paul Beck, and Michael Tuggle for joining me and sharing their wisdom with our listeners. Thanks for listening to Men in Progress from Treach Memorial United Methodist Church, Flower Mound, Texas. I'm Dave Casey. We'll see you next time.
This episode of the Men in Progress podcast is sponsored by Treach Memorial United Methodist Church, where our mission is to lead people into a growing relationship with Jesus Christ. If you're in or near Flower Mound, Texas on any Sunday morning, we would love to welcome you to any of the Treach services. Or you can follow our services anytime on our Facebook page or at tmumc.org.